My name is Noah Carter, and to most people, I don't exist. Every night at 11:30, I push my cart through the gleaming halls of the Meridian Corporate Tower, my footsteps echoing softly against polished marble floors. 27 floors of glass and steel filled with the dreams and ambitions of people who wouldn't notice if I disappeared tomorrow. I move like a ghost among their world of corner offices and mahogany conference tables, emptying trash bins and wiping down surfaces that cost more than my monthly rent. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The executives who work here treat me like furniture, something necessary but unremarkable. They discuss million-dollar deals while I vacuum around their feet, never lowering their voices, never acknowledging that I might understand every word they're saying. To them, I'm just Noah the janitor, a 32-year-old man who cleans up after people who matter. But invisibility has its advantages. I've learned that when people think you're nobody, they reveal everything. Tonight, as I dust the shelves in the executive conference room, fragments of conversations float through my mind. Market fluctuations, acquisition targets, supply chain vulnerabilities. Information that most people pay thousands for, served up to me on silver platters simply because I hold a mop instead of a briefcase. The irony isn't lost on me. 10 years ago, I was the kid who devoured math textbooks for fun, who could calculate compound interest in my head while my classmates struggled with basic algebra. But life has a way of humbling dreams, and poverty has a way of making choices for you. When Mom got sick during my sophomore year of college, someone had to work. Someone had to pay the bills. Victor, my older brother, was already climbing his ladder of success, and I stepped aside. The family dinner last Sunday still stings. Victor's voice echoes in my head as I empty another wastebasket. Noah's still playing janitor at that fancy building downtown, 32 years old and still mopping floors. Can you believe it, Mom? Clara, our mother, had shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her gentle eyes avoiding mine. She never defends me at these gatherings, but I see the sadness in her face when Victor starts his routine humiliation. Victor lives for these moments. The successful older brother holding court while the family failure serves as his favorite punchline. "At least he has steady work," Mom had whispered, but her words were drowned out by Victor's booming laughter and the approving chuckles of our cousins and aunts. "Steady work? Mom, I closed a $2 million logistics deal last week. $2 million! Noah makes what? 30 grand a year? If that?" Victor had leaned back in his chair, his expensive watch catching the light. "Some of us aim higher, you know. Some of us have ambition." I had continued clearing plates, my hands steady, even as my jaw clenched. Let them laugh. Let them think they know me. What they don't know is that every night after work, I go home to my small apartment and crack open finance textbooks. What they don't know is that I've been saving every dollar I can, studying market patterns, learning from online courses that I watch on an old laptop until my eyes burn. What they don't know is that I'm not who they think I am. The Sunrise Diner stays open 24 hours, a beacon of fluorescent light and bottomless coffee in a city that never quite sleeps. I discovered it 3 months ago after a particularly brutal night shift, when I needed somewhere to sit and think without the weight of my empty apartment pressing down on me. It's become my sanctuary. Every night after work, I slide into the same cracked vinyl booth in the corner, order black coffee and whatever pie hasn't sold out, and spread my financial notebooks across the sticky table. The waitress, Maria, stopped asking questions after the first week. Now she just refills my cup and lets me turn the diner into my personal classroom. Tonight, like every night, I'm deep in my studies when a gravelly voice breaks through my concentration. "Mind if I ask what's got you so fascinated?" I look up to find an older man, maybe 65, with sharp gray eyes and a rumpled suit that probably cost more than my car. He's holding a cup of coffee and wearing the kind of tired smile that comes from too many long nights. "Just some reading," I say, instinctively closing my notebook. He chuckles and gestures to the empty seat across from me. "Mind if I sit?" I'm Harold Whitman, and I haven't seen someone study market analysis with that kind of intensity since I was doing it myself 40 years ago. Something in his tone makes me pause. There's no condescension, no amusement at my expense. Just curiosity. I nod toward the seat. "Noah Carter? And you'd be surprised how much you can learn from library books and free online lectures." Harold settles into the booth, his eyes scanning the papers I can't quite hide. Goldman Sachs analysis of emerging markets. That's not exactly light reading. He takes a sip of his coffee. "Tell me, Noah, what do you think about the textile industry's supply chain vulnerabilities in Southeast Asia?" For a moment, I hesitate, but something about Harold's direct gaze encourages honesty. I spend the next hour explaining my theories about market inefficiencies, about opportunities hidden in plain sight, while major firms chase the obvious plays. Harold listens without interruption, occasionally nodding or asking pointed questions that push my thinking deeper. "You know," he says finally, "I spent 30 years managing portfolios for pension funds and endowments. Made a lot of money, lost some too. And in all that time, I've rarely met someone who could see patterns the way you do." I feel heat rise in my cheeks. "I'm just a janitor who reads too much." "No," Harold says, leaning forward. "You're a strategist who happens to clean offices. There's a difference." He pulls out a business card, simple, elegant, with just his name and a phone number. "I'd like to continue this conversation. How about we meet here, same time next week?" As I walk home that night, Harold's card burns in my pocket like a secret. For the first time in years, someone has seen me. Not as Noah the janitor, but as Noah the thinker. The feeling is intoxicating and terrifying all at once. 3 weeks later, another family dinner. This time it's at Victor's house, a sprawling suburban monument to success, complete with granite countertops and a wine collection worth more than most people's cars. I arrive early, as always, helping Mom set the table while Victor holds court in the living room. "The expansion into international markets is just the beginning. Derek and I are positioning Carter Logistics as the premier mid-Atlantic shipping solution. By next year, we'll have doubled our fleet and tripled our client base." I set down the last fork and listen more carefully. Derek Miles, Victor's new business partner, all flash and charisma, but something about him has always felt off to me. Too eager, too quick with promises that sound too good to be true. "Victor's always been the smart one," Aunt Linda says as I walk past with a pitcher of water, "while some people are content with simpler work." The comment is meant for me, of course. I've become the family's cautionary tale, the brother who settled for less while Victor reaches for the stars. I pour water into glasses and say nothing. During dinner, Victor regales everyone with stories of his latest deals. "We just signed a 5-year contract with Henderson Manufacturing," he announces, cutting into his steak. "Exclusive shipping rights for their entire East Coast operation. Derek found us the connection. Guy knows everyone worth knowing." I catch something in his tone, a slight tension when he mentions Derek's role. My years of invisible observation have taught me to notice these subtleties. When Victor talks about his own achievements, his confidence is bulletproof. But when he credits Derek, there's a hairline crack in his certainty. "How's the cash flow with all this expansion?" I ask quietly. The table goes silent. Victor looks at me as if I've spoken in a foreign language. "Excuse me?" "The expansion. You're adding trucks, warehouses, staff. That's a lot of upfront capital. I was just wondering about the liquidity position." Victor's laugh is sharp, cutting. "Liquidity position? Noah, you clean offices. What could you possibly know about business finances?" The table erupts in uncomfortable laughter. Mom stares at her plate, but I notice that Victor doesn't actually answer the question. Just curious, I say, taking a bite of my food. I read the business section sometimes. Well, maybe stick to the comics section. Leave the real business talk to people who actually run businesses. More laughter, more humiliation. But as I look around the table at their smug faces, I realize something has changed. The hurt is still there, but it's joined by something else. A cold, analytical clarity. I watch Victor's expensive watch, his perfectly pressed shirt, the way he gestures with hands that have never held a mop or scrubbed a floor. And I start to wonder, in a family so obsessed with appearances, how carefully is anyone actually looking at the substance underneath? Harold becomes my weekly anchor. Every Wednesday night at the Sunrise Diner, we dissect markets, analyze trends, and slowly he teaches me the art of strategic thinking. But tonight, I can't focus on his lesson about risk assessment. Tonight, I'm distracted by a question that's been eating at me since Sunday's dinner. Harold, I interrupt his explanation of portfolio hedging. If you suspected a company was overextended, growing too fast, taking on too much debt, how would you verify it? His gray eyes sharpen. Depends on the company. Publicly traded firms have to file reports, but private companies, he leans back in the booth. Why do you ask? I tell him about Victor's dinner boasts, about the expansion that seems too rapid, too aggressive, about Derek Miles and his easy promises. Harold listens without judgment, but I can see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Carter Logistics, he says finally. I've heard whispers about that name, nothing concrete, but in my circles, when people start whispering, it's usually for a reason. He pulls out his phone. Give me a few days. 3 days later, Harold calls me at work. His voice is tight, professional. We need to talk. Tonight, same place. When I arrive at the diner, Harold has spread papers across our usual booth. Financial reports, industry publications, printed emails, an investigative journalist's dream. Your brother's company is built on quicksand, he says without preamble. Look at this. He shows me invoice discrepancies, bills to companies that don't seem to exist, shipping manifests that don't match cargo records, a pattern of financial maneuvering that looks suspiciously like fraud. Derek Miles has been running this scheme for years. He partners with legitimate businesses, inflates their apparent value through fake transactions, then borrows against those inflated assets. When the house of cards falls, he disappears, and the legitimate partner takes the blame. I stare at the papers, seeing my brother's life's work crumbling in real time. Despite everything, despite years of mockery and dismissal, the thought of Victor losing everything makes my chest tight. How long do they have? Harold shrugs. Months, maybe less. The market's getting suspicious. When confidence breaks, it breaks fast. I gather the papers with shaking hands. Victor may be arrogant, may be cruel, but he's still my brother. And now I have knowledge that could save him, or destroy him. The question is, what am I supposed to do with it? Lena Rodriguez has been my friend since we were both 25 and working night shifts that the rest of the world forgot existed. She's a nurse at County General, and I'm a janitor at Meridian Tower, but we found each other in the strange solidarity of people who keep the world running while everyone else sleeps. Tonight, we walk the quiet streets of downtown after our shifts, the way we've done hundreds of times before. But tonight, I carry Harold's revelations like stones in my chest, and Lena notices my silence after 3 blocks. Okay, she says, stopping under a streetlight. What's eating you? Lena has this way of cutting through pretense that would terrify most people. She's small, barely 5'4", but her dark eyes can pin you down and extract truth like a surgical procedure. It's what makes her such a good nurse and such a good friend. I tell her everything. About Harold, about the financial investigation, about Victor's impending collapse. She listens without interruption, her face growing more serious with each detail. So, let me get this straight. Your brother, the same brother who humiliates you every chance he gets, is about to lose everything because he trusted the wrong partner. And you have information that could either save the company or help you profit from its destruction. Put like that, it sounds stark, mercenary, but it's accurate. What do you think I should do? Lena studies my face in the yellow streetlight. The question isn't what I think, Noah. The question is, who do you want to be when this is over? We start walking again, our footsteps echoing off empty storefronts. You know what I love about our jobs, she continues? People think we're nobody, but we're the ones who actually keep things running. I hold someone's hand while they're dying. You make sure people have clean, safe spaces to work. We matter, even if no one notices. She stops and turns to face me again. But here's the thing. We matter because we care about doing what's right, not because we care about being seen. Don't let Victor's cruelty turn you into someone you're not. So I should warn him? Just hand over information that could save the company that pays to humiliate me? I'm not saying that either. Lena's voice is gentle but firm. I'm saying whatever you do, make sure it's for the right reasons. If you want to help Victor, help him because it's right, not because you feel guilty. If you want to let him face the consequences of his choices, do that because it's justice, not because you want revenge. She starts walking again, then pauses. But Noah, if there's a way to protect the innocent people who'll get hurt, the employees, the families who depend on those jobs, that should matter more than what happens to Victor or his ego. As I walk home alone, Lena's words echo in my mind. She's right, of course. She's always right about these things. The question isn't whether Victor deserves what's coming to him. The question is what kind of person I want to be when the dust settles. And as I climb the stairs to my small apartment, a new thought begins to form. Maybe there's a third option, one that Lena hinted at, but didn't quite say. Maybe instead of choosing between saving Victor and watching him fall, I could find a way to save the company itself. After all, Harold has been teaching me about more than just market analysis. He's been teaching me about leverage, about positioning, about striking when the moment is right. And maybe, just maybe, my moment is coming.
Harold spreads a map across our diner table, marked with red pins and connecting lines that look like a military campaign. In a way, I suppose that's exactly what it is. Carter Logistics depends on 12 key suppliers, he says, tapping the pins with his pen. Remove any 3 of them, and the whole operation grinds to a halt. But here's the beautiful part. Most of these companies are small, family-owned operations. They're struggling in this economy, looking for silent partners or outright buyers. Over the past 2 months, Harold has been my professor in a master class I never knew existed. Corporate acquisition, strategic positioning, the delicate art of building influence without showing your hand. My life has become a careful balance. Days spent mopping floors and emptying trash bins. Nights spent learning the language of power. This one, Harold points to a pin marked Riverside Trucking. 40-year-old company. Solid reputation, but the owner's 68 and his kids aren't interested in the business. He's been quietly looking for a buyer for 6 months. I study the numbers Harold has compiled. Riverside Trucking handles 30% of Carter Logistics' local deliveries. If someone owned Riverside, they'd have significant leverage over Victor's operations. How much? I ask. $200,000 for a controlling stake. The owner wants to retire to Florida, start fishing every day instead of worrying about payroll. $200,000. 3 years ago, that number would have been impossible. But 3 years of living like a monk, saving every dollar, making careful investments under Harold's guidance, it's achievable. Barely, but achievable. And the others? Harold grins, the expression of a chess master revealing his endgame. Similar stories. Harbor Storage needs an investor to upgrade their facilities. Metro Parts Distribution is drowning in debt but has contracts worth millions. One by one, we can position you to control Carter Logistics' entire supply chain. The irony isn't lost on me. While Victor has been expanding outward, chasing bigger and flashier deals, I've been learning to think inward, to understand that sometimes real power comes from controlling the foundation rather than building the penthouse. That weekend, I take a drive to Riverside Trucking. The owner, Tom Garrett, is exactly what Harold described. Weathered hands, kind eyes, and the tired smile of someone who's carried responsibility for decades. We sit in his office overlooking a yard full of trucks, and I make my offer. "You seem young to be in the acquisition business," he says, studying my earnest face. "Maybe that's why I'm interested in preserving what you've built instead of dismantling it." Something in my tone convinces him. We shake hands, and just like that, I own my first piece of the puzzle. The news breaks on a Tuesday morning in March. I'm emptying waste baskets on the 18th floor when I hear it through the thin walls of an executive conference room. Carter Logistics missed a major delivery deadline. 3 truckloads of automotive parts just disappeared somewhere between Baltimore and Atlanta. I pause, my hand still on the trash bin, and listen more carefully. "It gets worse," another voice continues. "It turns out the shipping manifests were falsified. The parts were never loaded. Someone's been running phantom shipments and pocketing the insurance claims." My blood turns cold. This is Derek's handiwork. Exactly the kind of fraud Harold warned me about. But Victor's name is on the company letterhead. Victor's signature on the contracts. That evening, I call Harold from my apartment. The conversation is brief, tense. "It's starting," he says, "faster than I expected. By my count, your brother has maybe 6 weeks before the whole thing unravels completely." 6 weeks. I think about Victor's house, his expensive car, his endless confidence. I think about the employees at Carter Logistics, people with families, mortgages, dreams of their own. And I think about the decision that's been growing in my mind for months.
The next Sunday's family dinner is a different affair entirely. Victor arrives late, his usual swagger replaced by something brittle and defensive. "Business is business," he says when Uncle Robert asks about the news reports. "Sometimes you hit speed bumps. The strong companies adapt and overcome." But I can see the cracks, the way his hands shake slightly when he reaches for his wine glass, the way he avoids eye contact when Derek's name comes up, the way he keeps checking his phone, as if expecting bad news that keeps getting worse. Mom notices too. She keeps glancing between Victor and me, her gentle face creased with worry she doesn't know how to express. After dinner, as I help clear dishes, Victor corners me in the kitchen. "You know, Noah," he says quietly, "I may have been harsh with you over the years. Brothers, you know. It's just competition." It's the closest thing to an apology I've ever heard from him. It should feel like vindication, but instead it just makes me sad. "I know, Victor." He nods, looking older than his 35 years. "If anything ever happened to the company, I mean, hypothetically, Mom would be devastated. She's so proud of what I've built." The weight of his unspoken fear hangs between us. He's not asking for help. Victor's pride would never allow that. But he's acknowledging, for the first time,
that his empire might not be as solid as he's pretended. I finish loading the dishwasher and give him a gentle pat on the shoulder. Take care of yourself, Victor. As I drive home, I realize the decision has already been made. Not out of revenge, not out of pity, but out of something deeper, a recognition that sometimes the only way to save something is to let it fall first. The emergency board meeting is called for a Thursday afternoon in April. I know about it because Harold still has connections throughout the financial community, and bad news travels fast in those circles. Carter Logistics is facing insolvency. Creditors are circling. Victor's world is about to implode. Which is why I'm standing outside the conference room on the 23rd floor of the Meridian Tower at 3 o'clock wearing my best suit instead of my janitor's uniform. The secretary looks confused when I introduce myself as Noah Carter, but Harold appears beside me. Harold in his sharp business attire, carrying a briefcase and radiating the quiet authority of old money. "We're here for the Carter Logistics meeting," Harold says smoothly. "I'll need to check with Noah Carter," I repeat, handing her my business card. It's simple, elegant. Noah Carter, Principal, Carter Investment Partners. I believe my brother is expecting me. The lie comes easily, and technically it's not entirely false. Victor should be expecting me, even if he doesn't know it yet. When we enter the conference room, the conversation stops dead. Victor is seated at the head of a long table, surrounded by lawyers, accountants, and stern-faced men in expensive suits who clearly represent money Victor no longer has. His face cycles through confusion, embarrassment, and something approaching panic when he sees me. "Noah? What? Why are you here?" Harold takes a seat and opens his briefcase with theatrical precision. "Your brother is here in his capacity as a major stakeholder in several companies that have significant business relations with Carter Logistics." The room grows very quiet. Victor's lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, leans forward. "I'm sorry. Stakeholder in what companies?" I pull out my own folder, a neat collection of ownership documents that Harold and I have been accumulating for months. Riverside Trucking, Harbor Storage, Metro Parts Distribution, and as of last week, Coastal Freight Solutions. Between them, these companies handle approximately 70% of Carter Logistics' supply chain operation.
Victor's face goes white. Around the table, lawyers begin flipping through documents. Accountants start making rapid calculations, and I can almost hear the sound of assumptions crumbling. "This is impossible," Victor whispers. "You're a janitor." "I am a janitor," I agree calmly. "I'm also an investor who's been very carefully positioning myself for this conversation." Harold places another document on the table. "We're also prepared to present evidence of systematic fraud perpetrated by your business partner, Derek Miles. Phantom shipments, falsified insurance claims, inflated asset valuations, a pattern of criminal activity that your client may or may not have been aware of." Victor's lawyer looks like he's about to be sick. "Are you suggesting my client was involved in—" "I'm suggesting," Harold interrupts smoothly, "that your client was the victim of an elaborate con game, and that Mr. Noah Carter is prepared to help clean up the mess under certain conditions." For the first time in my life, I watch my older brother realize that he's not the smartest person in the room. The sensation is strange, not triumphant exactly, but quietly satisfying in a way I never expected. The conversation that follows lasts 3 hours. By the end, the terms are clear. I will assume operational control of Carter Logistics, inject enough capital to keep it solvent, and restructure the company to eliminate Derek's fraudulent operations. In exchange, Victor retains nominal ownership, but real control passes to me. It's a generous offer, more generous than Victor deserves, and certainly more generous than he would have given me if our positions were reversed. But Lena's voice echoes in my mind. This isn't about Victor. It's about the 43 employees who depend on Carter Logistics for their livelihoods. Victor signs the papers with hands that shake slightly. His pride is wounded, possibly permanently, but his company will survive. As the lawyers file out and Harold packs up his briefcase, Victor and I are left alone in the conference room. "How long?" he asks quietly. "How long what?" "How long have you been planning this?" I consider the question carefully. I've been studying finance for 3 years. I've been making strategic investments for 6 months, but I've been watching you underestimate me my entire life. He nods slowly, staring out the window at the city skyline. "I suppose I deserve this." "This isn't about what you deserve, Victor. It's about doing what's right for everyone involved." "Including me?" I think about all the family dinners, all the casual cruelties, all the times he made me feel invisible. Then I think about Mom's face, about the employees I've never met who will go home tonight to families they can still support. Including you. That evening, I call Lena from my apartment. She's just finishing her shift, and I can hear the familiar sounds of the hospital in the background. Beeping monitors, hurried footsteps, the constant hum of people working to save lives. "So," she says, "how does it feel to be a captain of industry?" Terrifying, I admit. Also, right. Like this is what I was supposed to be doing all along. And Victor? Humbled, maybe for the first time in his life. I pause, looking out my window at the city skyline. "Lena, I'm still going to clean offices." "What?" "Not every night, but I don't want to forget where I came from. I don't want to turn into the kind of person who thinks the janitor is invisible." Her laugh is warm, proud. "That's my Noah." "Just promise me you'll buy yourself some new suits. You're going to need them." 6 months later, Carter Logistics posts its first profitable quarter in 2 years. The turnaround isn't magic, it's careful management, honest accounting, and the radical concept of treating employees like valuable human beings instead of replaceable cogs.
I've instituted profit sharing, improved working conditions, and created advancement opportunities for drivers and warehouse workers who want to grow with the company. The changes cost money up front, but they pay dividends in loyalty, productivity, and the kind of reputation that attracts quality clients. Victor still comes to the office occasionally, though his role is largely ceremonial. We've found an awkward peace. Not friendship exactly, but a mutual respect born from crisis. He's quieter now, less certain of his own brilliance, and paradoxically more pleasant to be around. The real victory comes at our first family dinner since the takeover. I arrive to find Mom setting the table, the same ritual we've performed dozens of times. But tonight, when Victor begins to speak, it's not about his own achievements. Noah's increased company revenue by 30%, he tells the assembled relatives, opened 2 new distribution centers, hired 15 additional drivers. He's done things I never thought to try. The approval around the table feels strange after years of mockery. Aunt Linda nods appreciatively. Uncle Robert asks detailed questions about my business strategy. Even the cousins, who used to snicker when I cleared their plates, now listen with something approaching respect. But the moment that matters most comes later, when Mom corners me in the kitchen. "I'm proud of you," she says simply, her gentle hands holding my face the way she did when I was small. "Not because you're successful now, but because you never stopped being kind, even when it would have been easier to be cruel." After dinner, I drive to my old apartment building. I moved out last month. The new place is bigger, nicer, befitting my changed circumstances. But tonight, I want to remember where this journey started. I park outside the building and call Harold. He answers on the second ring, probably sitting in his own study with a glass of good scotch and a book about market theory. "How does it feel to be the master of your own destiny?" he asks. Like I never stopped being Noah Carter. I just finally figured out what that meant.
And what does it mean? I think about my mop and bucket, still stored in the utility closet at the new office. I think about Maria at the Sunrise Diner, who still saves me a slice of pie on Wednesday nights when Harold and I continue our weekly talks. I think about Lena, working her night shift at the hospital, holding someone's hand while they face their darkest moments. It means that dignity isn't about what job you do or how much money you make. It's about how you treat people when you think nobody's watching. It's about doing what's right even when it's hard. And it's about remembering that everybody has something valuable to offer if you're willing to see it. Harold chuckles on the other end of the line. Spoken like a true leader. As I drive home through the quiet streets, I pass the Meridian Tower where I spent 3 years learning to be invisible. The building still glows against the night sky, still houses the dreams and ambitions of people who believe they're changing the world. Tomorrow, I'll return to those gleaming halls, but this time, I won't be carrying a mop. I'll be carrying the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone assumes doesn't matter. And sometimes, if you're patient enough and principled enough, the invisible can become undeniable without ever losing sight of who they truly are. The janitor's son has come home.